Yeah, looks like it's fixed.
I don't think I have the PowerShell Discord.
Hey, John.
Hello.
Hello, hello.
Hey. Howdy.
You can see and hear me okay?
So far, so good.
Very good.
Okay. Hey, Tim. This is Hal.
Hey, Hal. Good evening to you, sir.
How are you? Whoa.
I'm pretty chipper, all things considered. How about you?
Fair to middling.
Okay. I know what it's like, man. The one thing that's good about it is that you know it'll get better. If things are going well, they'll get worse. If things are worse, they'll get better.
That is a very stoic way to look at it.
Mm-hmm. Ebb and flow.
I am... now I'm just busy.
Mm-hmm.
Fine. I'm just busy.
Mm-hmm. Can you guys describe exactly what the status of the PowerScripting podcast is now and how Ryan fits into it?
So I can give that a stab. So the current status is we're trying to record monthly, and Ryan is our coordinator. And when he can join us live, sometimes he'll come on and join us. But for the most part, he doesn't because it's, he's like
late.
3 o'clock in the morning for him.
Yep. Yep.
So that's kind of
UTC, or I thought he was UTC.
I think that's right.
Okay. Then 1 o'clock in the morning. Right?
Is he's in the UK, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Looks like London is 1:55 a.m. Ugh, the witching hour.
Yes, that would not be fun. Hey, Jonathan, do you see that the Slack preview of me is on the screen? There we go.
Should be gone now.
You got it.
There's just a little lag before it hits YouTube.
So I got to tell you, you ever what conferencing software do you guys use at work, if anything?
So lately, I've been using WebEx actually.
Really?
And some Microsoft Teams, some Slack, but the audio quality has just gone to complete shit with that. So,
really,
yeah.
I've we started using Zoom. I guess the beginning of the year, and what I like about Zoom is that it lines up all the video really well if you have a multi-party.
Yeah.
And I'm actually thinking of using it to host our Splunk podcast.
Okay.
Record with it, and then I can OBS stream my whole screen if I want to do that to Twitch or YouTube or whatever.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
But instead of
Skype
in that case.
Mm-hmm. The only thing that keeps me from wanting to use something like that is I really like to be able to split the audio channels.
Right.
And record, Hal in one channel and me in one channel and whoever else in a third channel.
Are you doing that now? And if so, how?
I am doing that now, and the answer is not trivial. There's a kind of a lot to it. I'm using some software that creates virtual cables, like virtual audio cables and virtual audio devices. And I have a bunch of routing going on where I'm actually going out to external hardware and then going back in to the recording software. And so, yeah, it's kind of a mess.
That reminds me of the game Mousetrap. That's not trivial. You're right.
Yeah.
Where's it's streaming is the room we like to talk to announce to, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that used to be our channel, and then the streaming people took it over. But
Yeah.
that's okay because we were gone for like 2 years. So
Fair.
that's fair.
I'm glad that the podcast is back. It serves a really good need, which both of you obviously are well aware of.
Yeah, I definitely miss doing it when we were not doing it.
You know, the reference episode I always think of, and I have no idea really why, was the one where Jason Helmick was the host and he interviewed you guys. Remember that, Turning of the Tables?
I have a vague memory of that.
Yeah, it was a while ago. I thought that was an interesting approach.
Have you seen Jason's show?
No, I haven't seen the show yet.
So,
no.
yeah, Jason Helmick is doing a YouTube show now that he's part of the PowerShell team. And I think he may have 3 episodes. I think he at least has 2. I've watched the first one, which I really enjoyed, but I haven't watched the other 2 yet.
Yeah, I've been meaning to watch those. How long are they on average?
I don't know. The first one was like 15 minutes, and he said that was long for what it was going to be. So I think they're probably pretty tight, pretty short.
Yeah.
Which is good for video.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, agreed.
I mean, I'm not one of those people like my daughter who, watches, I don't know how many hours of YouTube
Tell
a
me
day,
about
but
it.
it's a lot.
Yep. Same with my daughter. It's our daughter hasn't watched cable TV in a long months and months and months.
Oh, yeah.
It's all YouTube, like you said.
Yeah. I basically don't have cable TV except for no, we don't use the cable boxes anymore.
Yeah, I literally don't either. We stream everything.
Yep.
Boy, I wish we could do that. My wife is still bound for whatever reason to digital cable just to watch her favorite shows every night, like Everybody Loves Raymond and The King of Queens. But if I can show her that they're on Hulu or Netflix or something, she'll finally agree to let Comcast digital cable go out the window.
Right. Yeah, I think once that Disney service starts, we'll be getting that immediately.
Yeah, I kind of already priced that one in.
Yeah.
Yep.
And even, what is it, like $12.99 with Hulu and ESPN?
Wow.
So I already get Hulu, so I will drop that one, get Disney, be paying like $4 more a month or whatever. And,
Yeah, it's a deal.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, there's nothing like on-demand content. I mean, I loved remember when that first DVR came out, TiVo. Oh, yeah. I loved the TiVo. And being able to skip commercials, and nowadays with streaming, although they try to inject commercial-like stuff in there, and that really ticks me the heck off, but I love just on-demand exactly what I want, nothing extra.
Yeah, me too.
Well, I like that there are multiple business models. So on the occasion that I want to grab a show that's not in one of the, like in Hulu or Netflix, take, for example, like a History Channel or Discover or something like that, you can at least go to the app and stream it. So you don't have to actually, stress. You do get ads that way, so it's a little bit less of experience, but it's coming together, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think everything's working. I'm recording. We're streaming. Everybody can hear each other. That's all good. Levels look decent. Chat's working. Hopefully people can see us.
I'm not seeing you guys in my Skype window. I just see myself.
The trick is to go to the actual YouTube stream. But you got to mute it. You do have to mute it, otherwise you will,
I can attempt to send you video over Skype, but it may not work.
Right.
Yeah, I never had great success with that.
I mean, I have gotten it to work before using NDI, but the last time that I used NDI for the last show that we did, it was just a mess, and I ended up having to abort and go back to doing it a different way. it may just be because this machine is not powerful enough to handle sending all that video around. I'm not sure. I really need to spend some time troubleshooting that.
Okay, someone has Howler 9000 on the PowerShell Discord, and I'm kind of put out.
Are you sure it's not you? I mean,
I'm not. So what happens is it says this is an unclaimed account. Click here to claim it, and then I put my email address in, and it is not my password that I would expect it to be. So I don't know yet. Email is already registered. That's the weird. I'm going to have to figure this out.
Hey, John, I saw that picture of you getting some quality time with that blackbird. Wow, man. That must have been awesome.
That was really cool. So have you ever been to the Air Force Museum? What is it? It's not called the Air Force Museum, but it's the Air Force Museum in Warner Robins.
No, I don't. Oh, yeah.
So it's like the second largest one in the country, and you pull into the parking lot, and there's literally a B-1 Lancer sitting there and an A-10 Warthog just right off the parking lot. It's like, this place is awesome.
Yeah. I have been there, but it's been, I was probably 10 or something. 10 or, well, no, more like 15. I was probably about 15.
But yeah, they have a U-2 spy plane. Mm-hmm. They have an SR-71. They have a Global Hawk drone. They have, all kinds of, I think they got a couple B-29s. They've got a couple, at least one, I think it's 2 former Air Force Ones. They've got a,
You couldn't go in the Air Force Ones, could you?
No.
Okay.
They were older. I'm not even sure which presidents they were for because they weren't like labeled. It didn't have like a sign. It was just obviously, the graphics and everything. It's like, oh, that was an Air Force One at some point. Mm-hmm. They have John Travolta's Gulfstream, which he donated to them. But it makes no sense, right? Because it's an Air Force museum. So it's not labeled at all. They just have it sitting out there. It's a neat place. And the SR-71 that they have is literally the one that set the record for speed. It's that one. They have one of the Thunderbirds Air Force jets in there. I think it's the F-18, pretty sure. Mm-hmm. But they don't have anything newer. Mm-hmm. Like they don't have any F-22s or F-35s or anything like that because, I guess that kind of stuff doesn't belong in a museum.
They're in service.
Right, yeah. And I guess that's the same thing with the Nighthawk, right? The F-111. I think they're still using those. That's the one I really want to see in person. Mm-hmm. Because to me, that is the coolest looking plane that has ever been built. I mean, it looks like...
Which one is this?
It's the first stealth fighter, the F-111A. I don't remember. But yeah, the Nighthawk.
Oh, okay.
It's very angled. I mean, it's it's obvious that the technology plane is, to bounce the returns away from the receivers.
Yep, that is pretty cool. All right, I figured out how to get on Discord.
Okay.
For no reason, I just wanted to make sure that I could. And I'm on there with the right user ID, so that's good.
Yeah, I prefer this. Maybe I'm, old, but I prefer the Slack interface to the Discord
I thought
interface.
Discord is for the kids.
I've never
logged into Discord.
The Discord is for gamers. Like it's really optimized for to stream games, and the voice chat is integrated into the games, and it's
my son uses it to chat with his friends all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I guess Twitch is where it's at right now for
Twitch is big as well, of course.
With even the live coding stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's been an interesting and unexpected application of Twitch. To me, anyway, it was kind of unexpected.
Right, yeah.
I've never seen this. I've heard of this, but I've never really...
Yeah, it's rarely a good time for me to hop on. And then it's like, I'm watching somebody code and okay, that's cool, but I've got other stuff I need to do.
Yeah. I don't actually,
Indeed.
I mean, guys, I have to admit something here. I don't like watching video.
Oh, really? Yeah.
I would rather read something any day.
Okay.
I appreciate this interaction that we are having right now, but me personally, for my own consumption, I kind of shy away from video for some reason. I don't know. I've always been that way. So you guys ready to kick this thing off?
Yep. Whenever you're ready.
Let's do it.
You can send us.
Oh, good Lord. It's been too long. Hold on. I can do this. Hold on. Let's see, Tim. Okay, are you in chat anywhere? Are you in chat anywhere, Tim? In either the Slack or the Discord or the YouTubes?
No, I didn't even know there was a Slack. Huh.
Well,
I guess it would,
man.
You're not in the PowerShell Slack?
Oh, yeah, I am. That's right.
I was going to say, that would be shocking to me.
Yeah, I'm in there.
But there's a streaming channel in Slack.
Right.
So, let's see. Tim, how shall I introduce you other than your name, Tim Warner?
Just the traditional byline stuff is that I'm an MVP in cloud and data center management. I'm a full-time Pluralsight author. And I'm a teacher. Okay. That's my bag.
That's what I needed to know. All right. Tonight on the PowerScripting podcast, we are pleased to welcome Tim Warner. Tim is an MVP, and welcome to the show. You're also a Pluralsight author as well.
That's correct. Thanks a lot, Hal. Hey, John. It's really great to be back on the show with you.
Yeah, it's been a few years, hasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, time flies. All the old traditional cliches. How true they are, though.
Well, it's been a while. We're going through to kind of get back together with everybody now that the PowerScripting podcast is on a little bit different of a schedule. But we thought we'd reach out, see what you were up to lately, and kind of we were chatting before the show, talking about some of the things you were working on, Azure and PowerShell and AWS and PowerShell, and but I think the one that was kind of interesting to Jonathan and I was you typed in here, making a case to your boss for PowerShell. So tell us what this is about.
Right. And to illustrate that subject of making the case to your boss for PowerShell, I thought of two good mini case studies from my own industry experience. One happened in the earlier days of PowerShell, and one happened just a couple years ago since PowerShell's become cross-platform. The first example was I worked as a technology director at a private high school here in Nashville. And the question was, every fall when school starts, we've got an influx of n number of hundred of students, and these students all need Active Directory user accounts. My colleagues weren't proficient or willing to be proficient with VB script, which you might think initially, at least at that time, many years ago, might be a go-to. But I was just becoming exposed, getting interested and curious about PowerShell, and just was an obvious use case. And I figured out how to take a CSV of the students, which I got from the human resources, the people, they could eject a CSV out of the student database and do a little tweaking with it. And before you know it, what would have taken hours of clicky could be done in a minutes or a minute or less. Unbelievable difference of speed. So the question of making a case to the boss for me, for PowerShell or any initiative like that requires a paradigm shift, is showing rather than telling. And I know some people are more quantitative, and you're making a case to the boss that's going to require a cash outlay, going to Azure maybe. There, yeah, spreadsheets and graphs and forecasts, but something like administrative scripting, I found it's a more compelling argument to literally demonstrate that that savings in time. And of course, the savings in time translates to saving of money in terms of paying IT staff for extra time that they could be doing other things. And also outlining the fact that once you have your script right and it's running 100% correctly, you're eliminating human error because the script should do what it's supposed to do 100% of the time until something changes in PowerShell, but that's another discussion for another time. The other example more recently in my one of the things I do on the side is solution architecture, Azure solution architecture. And one of my most satisfying engagements with a customer was a case where it was a startup environment where they had a line of business web application and they wanted to sell it out of Azure. And the environment was, a app service app, an API app, a SQL database, and there was a VM in there to serve as multi-purposes. But there is this environment. And the customer was really happy us developing that solution, but then there was the question of scale. Well, if this thing really starts to take off, we have to generate this environment for n number of customers, and we don't want to bottleneck that deployment phase. So there, the making the case to the boss was, number one, the fact that in Azure, at least, you've got the JSON template definition. So, you don't have to clicky to hand create these environments over and over again. They're already defined in JSON. And then when you combine them with, say, Azure PowerShell, you've got a perfect recipe for turnkey, boom, 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 new customer onboarding, click or run a single command, and you've got an environment. Again, showing rather than telling. And just demonstrating that power, and it is such huge power, I think. Being able to geo-replicate a Azure SQL database with one line of PowerShell. I mean, stuff that in an on-premises mode 1 kind of IT is nearly unthinkable for most businesses. So that's my elevator pitch on that subject. What do you guys think?
I think that makes a lot of sense. And I know for me, I also kind of came in the PowerShell door via doing Active Directory administration that I used to do with VBScript. And I'm trying to remember back, I think the main two on-ramps, just based on, my experience from back then, were Active Directory guys and VMware guys. Seemed to be that the two first kind of groups that kind of got into PowerShell. And then there were the Exchange people, right? Because Exchange was one of the first, Microsoft products to really build their front end on top of PowerShell. And I wonder what it is now. If people are not using PowerShell yet, is it because they're new to the industry? Or
I'll bet that they're not in the cloud.
Okay.
So I'll make an assumption there. I do have a customer that I shall not name that some of my buddies on one side of the company make fun of the Windows guys and so that they're all behind. And I'm trying to think of what things are in common there at this name, company that shall be nameless. And I know one thing is that they're not in the cloud.
Okay.
Because instantly once you start thinking about doing something in the cloud, kind of to your point, Tim, of mode 1 operations, you have to change the way that you're thinking. Yeah. So, that's got to be one factor.
It occurs to me there's a follow-on I'd like to add to that argument of making the pitch to the boss for PowerShell. And hopefully the person in question who needs to make said pitch is presenting the case through the lens of how this benefits the organization.
Right.
And I guess I'm reminded of that because I'm really jazzed and humbled and grateful that Microsoft accepted a couple of my proposals for Ignite.
Oh, nice.
And I saw some people on Twitter who didn't get in. They shared their proposals. And upon reading them, my first thought was, these look to be really good proposals, but I can see that if I were sitting in Microsoft's chair, they're really high impact general interest, but what's in it for Microsoft? So I actually, when I wrote my proposals, I was thinking from a Microsoft marketer's perspective. I hate to say that. Well, I feel like Oz. Don't mind the person behind the curtain. But really, so making the pitch.
Behind these events, it is the marketing department.
Right, exactly. Well said.
So go ahead and tell us, what are your talks, if you're allowed to say?
Yeah, I am. One of them is on, it's an exam prep on the Microsoft Azure Fundamentals certification, the AZ900, and it's clear to me why they accepted it. My guess is because, A, I know that Scott Guthrie is a huge proponent of Azure education, and Microsoft Learning has got kicking out all these role-based certs. That's one, the push. Mm-hmm. And number two, that particular certification is aimed at anybody who touches Azure in any way. So marketing, sales, pre-sales, whatever your role, if you're going to be touching Azure, that would be a good skill set to have because it's relatively light, it's not very deep, and it's broad across Azure. So I'm psyched to do that. And the other presentation is more technical. It's on Azure Bastion. It's secure administrative access using Bastion. And again, my guess on why that got...
Stop for a second and tell us what Bastion is, because I am not familiar with that one.
Of course. Bastion is in public preview now. It's not even generally available, but it helps to address the problem of where you need to RDP or SSH into your cloud VMs, and of course, you don't want to put a public IP address on the VMs themselves. You may not have the ability or the resources to do a jump box or a VPN. So it's basically, Bastion is a turnkey way where you can RDP or SSH into your VMs on a virtual network and not have those VMs exposed in any way, shape, or form with public IP addresses. So essentially, the Bastion...
It is exactly what I thought it was, based on the terminology that I had been using when I was in operations, jump box, Bastion host. So, makes sense.
Exactly. It's a hosted jump box.
So you don't, gotcha. So you don't have to administer or, pay per se for that jump box instance, IaaS instance.
Is it kind of a transparent jump box where you don't actually see the jump box that you do in like, I forget what that's called, where you're streaming an application and basically it's streaming the RDP application on the jump box to connect you to the target machine?
Yeah, it really, in my opinion, from what I've seen in the non-NDA side of things, Bastion appears to be a hosted RDP gateway, the remote desktop services. It's platform as a service, so it is just about totally abstracted from you. I mean, you click, and it deploys into your virtual network on its own subnet, but you don't interact with the Bastion. You certainly don't need to connect to it to do administration.
Right. I
think you can add a network security group to it, but I'm not even sure that's required. And the last I used it about a couple weeks ago, the way that you use it from an administrator's perspective is that in the portal, when you click connect, there's the tabs there to do an RDP or an SSH. If you're using Bastion, there's just a third tab there that says Bastion.
Okay.
And it'll open the session in another browser tab. So eventually, I know Microsoft plans to allow clients, so we can use our RDP, the Microsoft desktop client or your own SSH client. But at least as of a couple weeks ago, the end user experience was all in a browser. Okay. But I like it. I'm a fan of the tech so far.
Okay. So it's an old concept done as a SaaS, basically. So I've related but different question, and maybe this might be a question for Jonathan. Like, I'm out of operations for a while, man. Are people still logging into servers individually, and have you seen that decrease over time?
I think it is decreasing, but I think it still happens if you need to. It depends on the application that's running on the server. If it's an application that actually requires interaction on the server, like maybe it has some kind of interface that you use to, cycle the services so that it does it gracefully or something like that, or gives you some indication of where, if services are up or down, that kind of thing. I have seen it in that case, but I do think in general, the trend is moving away from that. I don't think it's moving away, at least where I work, it's not moving away as fast as I thought it was going to. I thought, everything was going to be server core by now, but it isn't. At least not for the stuff I'm involved with.
Okay. Yeah, I was kind of wondering about server core as well. So it seems like, what's changed? You tell, what is Windows systems administration like in 2019 compared to, 2-3 years past I mean, has it changed? I mean, new version of PowerShell. What about software as code? Administering multiple systems, at scale, easier, better. Have you seen some trends here?
Well, the picture was that for John or for me, Hal?
Go for it, man.
The trends that I've seen here in Nashville, Tennessee, where I'm based, is that number one, I think some of this depends on the size of the org. The smaller, more agile groups, at least from what I see through my pinhole, that's where I see more of the old school traditional RDP to individual boxes. But of course, a smaller company by definition isn't going to have rows and rows of servers and a data center necessarily. But then as the business gets bigger, I'm pretty proud. I have some close friends here in Nashville who work for some big old healthcare conglomerations and so forth. Mm-hmm. And while on one hand, the huge enterprises struggle with heavy siloing, I mean, each IT pro is in their own little tube, as I imagine it, and it's like they want to go to the next tube to see what's going on over there, but they've got to submit these requests and tickets and approvals. So they're contending with that siloing, but I'm also seeing a trend to embrace some of the stuff we're talking about. You've got the virtualization. That's a mature enough technology where it's assumed that everybody's running VMware, Hyper-V, or some combination. But I'm noticing here in Nashville a larger and larger embrace of things like least privilege security, just enough administration and PowerShell, for instance. There's a company here in Nashville called Sentry. What is it called? I know the owner really well. But it's the idea of really protecting privileged access to servers and trying to centralize management more and do, administrative scripting. Mm-hmm. But, we come back, I've found anyway, in my experience, we come back to that traditional DevOps challenge of not just the siloing of different IT groups, operations and development and QA, but them kind of flirting with each other, realizing so much buzz nowadays with DevOps and continuous integration, continuous development, and that coming down from the C-suite. Hey, we need to start looking at this, and our compliance is telling us that we should do this. It reminds me in my mind of a middle school dance where you've got the shy boy on one side of the ballroom and the shy girl, and they're like looking at each other and they want to get together, but they're overcoming fear and, just new experiences. So much of this DevOps thing, I think, is about psychology and doing things new and different instead of the old, and instead of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Does that make any semblance of sense?
I agree with you 100%. And I had been speaking with a lot of customers, and I've got a lot of quite advanced customers, a lot of fun to work with, doing a lot of newer technologies and thinking in terms of past the cloud and into microservices and containers and all that. But along the way, this conversation of who's doing DevOps. Oh, and I do a yearly DevOps state of DevOps panel at my company's conference, and I kind of realized, hey, this is going to be a change over time, and it's going to be a decade. But at the same time, the reason it's a decade is not because of the technology; it's because of the people and the natural human tendency to try and avoid change because change is scary.
I don't think. Don still owns the statement, I think, learn PowerShell or get ready to flip burgers or something. Remember that famous Don Jones?
Learn how to say, would you like fries with that?
There you go. That's it. And why am I reminded of that? Oh, yeah, right. To circle back to that question of convincing the boss. From the boss's perspective, who's going to be pitched to on getting the ops team at the least proficient with PowerShell, I would like to remind those people, maybe it's coming from the boss rather than the employee, right? So to kind of look at that question from the other direction, I myself would
career development.
Yeah, exactly. Frame it not only that this is what you're going to do because this is where the company's going, but that you're future-proofing your career and you're doing yourself a solid by expanding your skill set, because this is the direction not only where IT is going, but it's been going and is going now. Mm-hmm. So it's like the opposite message to, oh, well, I better hoard this knowledge so the company sees that I'm, not expendable. Well, lesson number one, everybody's expendable.
I hate that, man. We deal with that so much on the vendor side, which is where I am, where there are protective people and the culture lets them do that. And it's so poisonous, really.
Yeah, I'm full of cliches, by the way, but there's that old saw, if you love someone, set them free, and if they return, it's meant to be. I'm an individual contributor, and that's really how I like it, but if I were a manager, and the managers that I've loved the most are ones that have that attitude, I want to help you, the employee, grow your career and be your best professional self. And yeah, the company's investing in you, and you might take that investment and go to a competitor, but come on now. How much do you want to live life? How well do you want to live life?
And I guess I would say that the trend that I'm seeing is definitely toward a more DevOps mentality where even the operation teams are using agile methodologies. I mean, they're working in sprints. They're using those type of tools, Gia and whatever the tool of the month is, and they've got doing retrospectives and, sprint planning meetings and just the type of methodologies that are heavily in use by developers. And I'm seeing almost all development now going into containers. It's either Go or JavaScript, and it's running in containers, and that's it. I mean, I don't see anybody developing in-house applications to run on Windows. I'm not seeing
I agree with
any of that.
However, I am still seeing Java in that same paradigm alongside the Go and the JavaScript.
Right.
Well, I have a question for you, Jonathan. Is all of this development, any production services exposed via containers?
Oh, yeah.
I still haven't, because I've always loved and admired development, but I've always been historically more of an operations person, and I'm still to this very minute trying to wrap my mind more around the containers. I know the elevator pitch about that they're much faster and more agile than VMs. That's fine, but can you speak a bit more about why your devs love using containers both for development testing as well as in production?
Because they don't have to know or care anything about the infrastructure.
I mean, think about the dictionary definition of the word container. It's a closed box, and you've got ports that go in and out of it, and so developers love abstraction. So it's right to that interface.
And it also allows them to do their configuration as code, right? So the types of things that we're doing on the Windows side to do configuration as code, they have a configuration document that spins up their containers, and it's part of their CI/CD pipeline. So they just deploy, and it spins the containers for them. They may have some automation. Say they're spinning. They're deploying version 5 of the application. They may have, as part of their pipeline, it may as it's spinning up version 5 containers, it's tearing down version 4 containers so that there's no loss of service. And they don't have to care about any of the load balancing or any of that stuff at all. It's just all transparent to them. And in some cases, they may not know or care how many containers their application is running across, because there may be a management layer that's handling all of that for them based on the load. So, it's just a much simpler paradigm, I would say, for a developer. It's a much easier path, and it's much faster for them to, in this mindset of, hey, we're deploying all the time. We're just doing incremental updates, and we're deploying. They need to be able to deploy as fast as possible and not think about what has to happen to get their code into production. They don't have to worry about that at all if they're leveraging a solid container infrastructure, and they've got their configurations for their Docker or whatever they're using, their container technology.
Boy, that is super high impact info for me, at least. Thanks. That portability aspect, that it doesn't matter as long as you've got the Docker daemon, the server piece. It doesn't matter whether you pop the container up in AWS,
it doesn't
Azure,
matter.
on premises. It literally doesn't matter. It's universal. Wow.
Yeah, and the dependencies are all bottled up inside of that image. So you don't have to worry about the operating system version, the DLLs, and all those other things. It's all the instructions for putting this into production are right there.
Well, to that point of DLLs, I'm wondering, I know that when Microsoft and Docker first became BFFs, the PowerShell team developed a module for Docker to wrap the Docker commands, and I guess that's since gone the way of the dodo. Jonathan, how much, and Hal, you too, have you seen any uptake with Windows Server containers or the Hyper-V container, or has it all been Linux in your cases?
So it's all been Linux containers so far, and I think the reason for that is because we don't have anybody who's really doing .NET development. Not that you couldn't run a JavaScript container on Windows. I mean, of course you could, but they aren't, and you guys
don't have any .NET going on anymore?
Not that I'm aware of. Not that I see. Now, the things that are running on Windows are, they're third-party applications that have Windows as a dependency. And of course, those are, in most part, right, they're kind of the old style of, my application is running on, these 5 servers, and they're behind a load balancer, and some of them are in this data center, and some of them are in that data center. And, but even some of the third-party vendors that I've been working with are starting to think about where it makes sense to start putting their application so that it can be deployed in a container. And at least the one that I work with mainly, it's called PMG, and they're thinking about they have gotten their application to run successfully using containers, and their Windows, they're running on Windows Server 2019 containers.
So Ryan is telling us in the chat room that he is seeing a lot of Windows Server core containers out there.
Oh, good.
I'm not, but then my customers that I happen to be working with this year, none of them have big .NET shops. I know there are some out there, but I'd have to hit up some of my peers to see if they're seeing those containers, but none in my vision right now.
Yeah, and like I said, all the developers I know are either writing in JavaScript or Go. And if it's for performance, it's Go. I mean, all the way. They're heavy Go users.
Yep, I saw that flip happen as well. We're doing that internally at my company, and a lot of related stuff. I'm seeing that.
That's very interesting. Leads me to wonder about .NET Core. I'm active in a few of the user groups here in Nashville, and gosh, even across, I was over in where the heck was that? Chattanooga for PowerShell on the River, and I asked everybody in my sessions, so who's using PowerShell Core, PowerShell v6? Nobody raised their hand. So I wondered what you guys and anybody in the stream have experienced with uptake on PowerShell Core and .NET Core.
So we're still doing a lot of PowerShell for automation across the board. Most of what I use PowerShell for now is leveraging PowerShell within an orchestration engine. And so, there may be other things that happen that aren't PowerShell code, REST calls or database queries or, logic. But, for example, if I'm doing something against SCCM or Active Directory, I'm doing that with a PowerShell action that's using PowerShell code that's running that. And it may be taking in data from outside the script, running the script, and then outputting data that's used, somewhere else in the workflow, in the automation. So that's something that's used heavily in our environment, especially for things like patching. We have a whole patching automation that's all using PowerShell in the back end through an orchestration engine. And we were even patching Linux servers using PowerShell, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's kind of hardcore. Yeah,
but
I think that there's plenty of it, but we, like me, Hal, you, Jonathan, we're just not, that's not our environments that we're seeing right now.
Right. But the thing that I think that is going to start making people want to make the switch to PowerShell 7 is the performance improvements. Because we are getting performance improvements, and especially like the web-based commandlets, like the invoke REST method and those, I know that there are significant performance advantages to using PowerShell Core over Windows PowerShell with those commandlets. And because so much of orchestration and automation, at least the stuff that I'm seeing, involves making web calls or making REST, sending data via REST, pulling data via REST, that kind of stuff, and doing manipulation of objects, converting them into JSON, converting them back from JSON into objects, all that kind of stuff is, at least from what I've seen, heavily in use, and you get a performance advantage and new functionality when you go to PowerShell Core, including the you don't have to do the workaround to be able to talk to an endpoint that isn't going to let you use TLS 1.0 at all, right? You've got and you don't have to go the .NET way and specify TLS 1.2 and to do your invoke REST method. That problem goes away in PowerShell Core.
Second.
Yes.
PowerShell Core. What does PowerShell Core do differently there that affects this the TLS issue that you're talking about?
It has support for newer versions of TLS baked into it.
So, okay, I think I get it now. So basically, I forget the name of it. Was it like system.net.http or something?
Yeah.
Whatever the .NET object. That's the guy that's actually the culprit with Windows PowerShell.
Yes.
Okay.
I think that's true. I'm not sure exactly how that works under the covers. We'd need Mike Krause on here. I think he wrote all that stuff.
Cool.
Mark Krause. I think that's right. I hope that's right. Mark's awesome.
Extending that question of .NET Standard, .NET Core, .NET Framework, I'm wondering what Bruce Payette is up to at Amazon.
Yeah, I do too.
I do know that he's re-architected the AWS PowerShell module. Originally, I guess, last time I used it, it was a single monolithic module with everything, and he's decomposed that like the Azure modules, which is a beautiful thing, but I don't know if they're targeting .NET Standard, because that's what happened with Azure PowerShell late last year, of course, moving from the Azure RM modules that are based in .NET Framework versus the AZ modules that are .NET Standard, so they can run under .NET Core or .NET Framework proper.
Okay.
So this was news to me. I didn't hear that he had gone to AWS. What do we know about what he's doing over there?
I don't know anything about what he's doing over there.
He was at Microsoft. I'm on his LinkedIn. He was at Microsoft 17 years.
Yeah, he was.
Dang.
Yeah, what a win that is for Amazon. Wow,
yeah,
the architect of the PowerShell language.
They've gotten several really good Microsoft people.
Huh.
So all I know myself is what he shares, and he's gotten much more verbose on Twitter since he's gone to Amazon. But what he's shared there, and the most recent one, is about the release of the new AWS PowerShell modules, plural.
I see that, yeah. This is a significant update as it modularizes the 3,000 odd commandlets.
Now, I wish somebody would do the same thing for Google Cloud Platform, because I don't know if you have ever used the Google Cloud commandlets. We are not an Amazon shop because our company considers Amazon a competitor. So we're doing more stuff with Google and with Microsoft. And I've had the opportunity recently to have to enable the use of the Google Cloud Platform commandlets. And I mean, you can go to the PowerShell gallery and do the installation, but like the first time you run it, it tells you, hey, you need to have the Google SDK installed. And you install the SDK, and it's supposed to be able to like update your path, but it can't update the path. So you have to go and update the path. And then you try and run it, and it's like, oh, well, we need Python to actually run these PowerShell commands.
What?
So,
Oh boy.
so you need to make sure you have the path to Python also in your, in your path, so that we can find Python to run this Python stuff under the covers to make your PowerShell work, which is just, it's kind of a mess, because I have not been able to seamlessly deploy that. Right, because I want to configure my servers as code. I've been doing some work recently with Ansible, and I want to just be able to create an Ansible configuration that will lay that prerequisite down on my servers seamlessly and have it work. But I mean, it's a mess just because of the way that particular implementation works. Which is, you'd think Google would do a better job of making it automatable, because they're not a big GUI company. So
right.
I'm looking back. It's been a little while. Let's see, October of 2016.
Yeah, we had somebody on a long time ago.
Chris Smith is his name.
Okay,
and that's who we had on. I think that's the only time we had anybody from Google about that. I don't recall there being I think I would remember if there were two of them.
Yeah, I think so.
I did quickly find that. So maybe
that's weird.
Get them back on the record.
Yeah, maybe so.
Maybe they'll be
it's been a couple years since I've used the AWS commandlets, but I remember at the time when I was using them, I thought these are really nicely done. They're nicely written, and they were all super documented. And then I learned from Trevor Sullivan, if you know him, he told me that it was just one guy behind all of that whole module. I can't imagine. Yeah. Unbelievable. So I've always admired Amazon for that. I'm glad that they have Bruce on the job. But yeah, with regard to Google, it's been even longer since I've worked with their stuff. But I went out to the Googleplex to get training directly from Google in a previous job I was at. And I was just shaking my head the whole week over this kind of stuff. I'm like, I think they need to hire some UX, UI people, number one. And number two, I think they need to hire some people who actually specialize in the Microsoft stack if they want to play in this space. Yeah, I'm sad to hear that hasn't changed.
Well, you know what, Jonathan, I think I found the problem. I just searched Twitter for GCP and PowerShell, and the first thing that comes up is us from 2017. 2016, I'm sorry.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's just not been a lot of activity there, at least according to that quick, community check there.
Yeah, I didn't notice the last time that module was updated in the gallery. It's it's possible it's been sitting out there for a while and not touched, but I don't know. I mean, they had some documentation on their site about, hey, this is what you need to do, but it's not the kind of thing I can deploy cleanly yet without having to go back and create pass and registry keys and.
Once you lay down does it work? Once you satisfy all the prerequisites, how do the actual commands work?
I haven't heard any issues once I get everything installed correctly. And one of the things that plays into this a little bit is, for example, if I myself am on the box that has or maybe it doesn't have the module yet, and I install the module from the gallery and I start using it, that's fine. It's all in my context. But if I'm if I'm deploying that and it's in the system context and it's trying to make the SDK available for all users, it's a little different. Like the way that it automatically installs the SDK goes into like your temp directory of your user account. So it's not available to everybody on the system. And it's,
wow.
Maybe there's a better way to do it, but I haven't figured it out yet. It's something I'm still trying to figure out the best way to make that happen so that I can just deploy it. And when I do, launch my Ansible config against that machine, it just gets it installed and everything works the way it's supposed to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking for builds of the Cloud SDK for Windows, and if I'm reading this right, 2017 is the last time they bumped it.
Okay. Yeah, based on the way it works, I mean, it's clear that it's not getting a ton of attention, and maybe that's something that I need to raise within my organization, who has some leverage with Google because of its size, and maybe I can, figure out somebody to talk to. That's probably what I need to do.
And it's possible that I'm wrong, that I'm just looking at an archive version where it just has that older build, but I linked to it directly from the GCP Cloud SDK website. So
if any of you listeners have solved this problem, if you know the answers to this, please get in touch with me. Hit me up on Twitter, please.
Oh, 1-800.
Yeah.
John.
1-800 help John.
Right. Nice.
Or a tweet at PowerScripting. That'll do.
Go ahead.
Nope. You first.
What are you learning recently that you're teaching? Because I know that you're, as a Pluralsight teacher, you're continually learning ahead of your teaching, right? So what are you learning right now? What are you focusing on?
Boy, that is so true, and that's one of the great joys I have in my career, that I can deep dive and then move on. And of course I'll revisit it. But to answer your question, the last course I did for Pluralsight was outside of my normal comfort zone. It was in Azure Data Platform.
Okay.
Specifically getting into what's available in Azure regarding, Azure SQL Data Warehouse and data warehousing in general. What's available in terms of data lake storage and what that means. And then we eventually got into Hadoop, which is HD Insight in Azure, and then Databricks and Azure Databricks, Azure's hosted Databricks. So,
I don't know what a Databrick is.
Right. What Databricks is a provider of a hosted Apache Spark environment. So you can spin up an Apache Spark cluster. And if you don't know what Apache Spark is a big data processing engine that was designed as a successor or an alternative to MapReduce, which is the processing query engine used in the original Hadoop. So you've got Spark, and then you've got hosted Spark as Databricks, and then Azure partnered with Databricks to host that hosted environment. It's kind of meta. It reminds me of Inception, the movie. But that whole subject of big data processing, I worked with Hadoop a bit several years ago, but it was nice to get back in and stretch, and you got to learn the stuff pretty deeply to be able to teach competently, So it was really satisfying. Good stuff.
That's cool. You know anything about big data, Hal?
I've heard of it. We're actually doing stuff with Spark now, so it's turned into an interesting thing where Splunk is great at certain things, but it's not great at everything. And the world of big data and the analytics use cases are pretty wide. So we've actually taken to kind of applying some other ways to integrate data in from different tools, do things on the front end before it gets into Splunk. When it comes to Spark, we are basically leveraging the strengths of Spark to do massive correlation when you have like massive cardinality, like say something like a credit card number or a GUID, any field that has like a huge number of values to it, unique values to it, that's high cardinality. And Splunk is not great at processing that type of data set. But Spark is. So we actually will take advantage of Spark sitting off to a side, marshal the data that's stored in Splunk, send it to Spark, and it'll spin up workers. It'll do the search, and it'll return the answers back to Splunk. So I've definitely seen that type of interesting change in my landscape, where Spark is a tool. Hadoop was a tool. You see these different engines and interfaces, and it's all about the use case. It's just like we just have different tools in the tool belt, but the interesting thing is, okay, what are you trying to accomplish? What are you trying to do?
Yeah, exactly. I always look at Hadoop and big data almost from, I think of a bulldozer for some reason. I know that's not the right metaphor, but you've got this huge pool of data that's completely or unstructured or maybe semi-structured. Maybe it's JSON if you're lucky. But all this unstructured data spread across n number of nodes, and you're trying to gain insights from this huge lake, data lake, actually. And you're overcoming all of that unstructured data just with sheer CPU horsepower going across all these nodes, and this algorithm, Spark or MapReduce, mapping across all of the nodes to try to retrieve what it needs to answer the query, and then reducing or distilling it back to your result set. And one thing that might be of interest to PowerShell scripters, if you're at all interested in this subject of data analytics, is at least speaking for Azure Databricks, it uses the notebook model. If you've heard of Jupyter Notebooks, Jupyter, which, boy, did those impress me.
Joel Bennett has done some stuff with Jupyter Notebooks and PowerShell.
No kidding. I will investigate
it's been a while
that tonight.
Since I remember him talking about it, but I know that he has.
I know of the concept, but I haven't touched it in some time.
Wow. Yeah, because what's so beautiful about Jupyter is you've got this collaborative workspace where you can combine your source code and run it live and get your result set live. And you can add markdown so you can document everything. You can essentially make a presentation-ready document. And then depending on the audience, developers, data scientists, they may want to tweak the code, and end users, business end users would just want to look at the results. You can format those Jupyter notebooks to serve any persona. And I'm going to contact Joel about that tomorrow. PowerShell and Jupyter notebooks. Thanks for that heads up. That's interesting.
Yeah, no problem.
So I'm distracted. I've got a group text with a few buddies of mine, and one of them, he said, "Hey Hal, there were some new free games that dropped." That's his only purpose in life. Sometimes it's let me know that hey, there's new free games on Epic or Steam or something. So anyway, hey Sean. Hey Tim. We were talking earlier about kind of AWS and Azure, and do you have any recent experiences on the Azure side as far as what's happening in the PowerShell support there? Mm-hmm. Other than Bastion, which we did talk about.
Right. I mean, the biggest bump was just the PowerShell tools team, or the Azure tools team, whatever the group is who does the PowerShell for Azure. They're re-architecting all the modules in late 2018. And that created a fairly big speed bump there because, it's like the Azure RM commandlets were in Resource Manager. It wasn't like a few years ago before ARM came out, you had the Azure module. But, so there's the question, can I stay on the Azure RM commands, or do I have to re-architect all my scripts and use AZ? And the short answer to that is, well, it depends, the classic answer. But really, I'd say absolutely. You'd want to re-architect and get on AZ immediately, because the bottom line is Microsoft is only going to do bug and security fixes to the Azure RM modules through the end of 2020, and then it's gone.
Wow.
And also, given how rapidly new features and products show up in Azure, all of that PowerShell support is only going into the AZ module. So really, you have to re-architect and go forward. But the beautiful thing there that I want everybody to be aware of, if you're not, is that there's a compatibility command called enable Azure RM alias. You run that guy, and that'll create all of the aliases for the Azure RM commands.
Oh,
so
that's nice.
It's a really beautiful shim, so that your existing Azure RM commands should, fingers crossed, and the vast majority, in the high 90%, everything I've heard from feedback has been almost no problems using the compatibility commands. And then even when it comes to re-architecting, Joel Bennett, actually, speaking of him, gave me a really good tip on that, using PowerShell Script Analyzer to auto-expand aliases.
Oh, okay.
So he and his team used automatic alias expansion with the AZ commands, the Azure RM aliases, and the PS Script Analyzer to get their scripts.
Oh, to just kind of refactor their scripts.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah. And he only ran into, I think, one command where there was a name change to the commandlet and or a parameter name. But I know that the tools team did everything they possibly could to just make it as simple as going from Azure RM VM, for instance, to AZ VM.
Okay. So we do have a question out here that I don't think we've gotten to yet. And the question is, what are your suggestions, or do you have any stories about taking someone who is just in the mindset of writing little scripts in PowerShell to more of a developer mindset where they're doing more? They may be developing full modules, using source control, Pester testing, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that was the first thing that popped into my head. That's actually worked for me.
Okay.
Helping people, starting, like you said, with just running other people's scripts, and then maybe going from one line ad hoc stuff to a function to a module. But I found a really nice bridge is exactly that. Get source control. And if the person has enough intellectual curiosity, if they're a geek, they hopefully will consider it a nice challenge.
Right.
And of course, they've seen Git all over the place. Their developer colleagues use it. They're probably a bit scared of it. It's a great challenge to get comfortable, even if they're only using and committing to their own repository. So getting comfortable with a Git client and having local repos, and then going to, say, GitHub, a private, or contributing to a public, starting to branch out from there and making the case that in so doing, you're not only having fun as a geek, but you're dramatically increasing your value in the IT marketplace.
I know that one thing that I did with a colleague was to get him to start using Visual Studio Code. And once you get your GitHub configuration set up in Visual Studio Code, it is like trivial to store your stuff in source control and commit to master or whatever branch. You know, maybe the branch concept may need to come a little later with with branching off, doing branches, but at least committing your scripts into source control and committing all your changes and, putting comments in there when you commit, that kind of thing, I think is, if you're using Visual Studio Code, is very simple, but you need to use Visual Studio Code to make it simple, in my opinion, because otherwise you're going back and forth from the ISC to, you're either issuing the commands to do the commits in the command line via PowerShell, which is fine, that's cool. Or you're maybe using the client for Windows or Mac or whatever and doing it that way. But in my mind, just doing it within Visual Studio Code is so easy that's an easy hump to get over to get people to start actually using source control. And you may need to help them configure it the first time, but once it's there and once they understand it, I've had good success getting people to start using source control with their PowerShell scripts via Visual Studio Code.
Yes, and you mentioned ISE. I'm surprised. I know that it's still... I've finally gotten off of it 100%, but you've got to get off it. It's not going to be... It's .NET Framework. It doesn't support .NET Core. I know Tobias's ISE steroids is all that in a bag of chips, but I have to say that after all this time now working daily with VS Code, I don't miss Tobias's tool as much because the extension framework, as you guys know, is so robust. Whatever you want to do, there's got to be an extension for it.
Oh, yeah. And
awesome.
in some cases, it's written by Microsoft for some third party. And, and it works wonderfully.
Yep. Oh yeah, that's very true in the Azure ecosystem for sure. From a log, that Azure account extension will keep you logged in with your Azure account. The Azure Resource Manager snippets make template development a heck of a lot easier. The Azure Resource Manager extension itself that gives you the Java and the schema validation and all that. Yeah, it just goes on from there. It's a wonderful thing. But yeah, about the source control, I also would strongly suggest after the learner get comfortable with the basics of Git, working alone, they've got to get on board with branching if they're going to be committing to a central repo with other people coming in. And then when you throw upstream in, when you've got a forked repository that you've cloned and you want to ultimately get your commits up into upstream, if you're not on your own branch, you're cruising for trouble. I've learned that the hard way.
So are you actually seeing people collaborating on PowerShell scripts? Because I almost never see that. Uh-huh. I almost always see, a PowerShell script has one author, they maintain it, and that's it. I don't see a lot of, where I've got a team and they're all working on this module together. So we got to, we've got to control branching and all that stuff. And that's not something that I've had to deal with personally, just because I write my code.
Sadly, I think the uptake on that is slow. I think it's in process. I agree with you. Whenever I'm speaking at a conference or a user group, I typically ask that question. It happened in Chattanooga recently, where just about everybody said, I'm an army of one.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, don't you have other colleagues using PowerShell? Yeah. Have you thought of maybe sharing? Sharing is caring. I found it actually, for me anyway, it's been feast or famine, where the companies that I have dealt with that are doing collaborative stuff with PowerShell, they're all in. They're branching. That's what I mean by feast or famine. Either they're individual island PowerShell scripters, or they are in it to win it, and they're doing Agile and the whole kit and caboodle.
Okay. Wow, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how to get people started using testing framework for PowerShell? How to get them to start using Pester?
I have to admit,
I don't know.
I never got started there.
I've done stuff with Pester. I
have to raise my hand.
I've written tests. I've written, I've got CI/CD pipelines that run my Pester tests and deploy my PowerShell code. But I'm the only person I know that's doing any of that stuff so far. So I don't have a good suggestion on that. I do recommend, what is his name? Adam Bertram. Adam Bertram's book on LeanPub for Pester. Get that and read it. I think he's updating it again because I know that there have been some updates to Pester. But there's also at least one good course on Pluralsight about Pester, and it was done by, what's his name? He's a SQL guy. It's not coming to me, but there's a Pester course on Pluralsight if you have access to Pluralsight. But Adam's book was an invaluable resource for me for Pester.
A guy named Joel Sallow has a GitHub repo called PS Koans. PSKOANS.
Yeah, we had him on the podcast. Actually,
that wasn't that long ago, was it?
Yeah, it was a few months ago. Just because we only record once a month. But yeah, that's a great suggestion. PS Koans. That is such a neat way to learn PowerShell, and then you've got the Pester stuff kind of built in.
Right. So that, I think, is the secret sauce, for me anyway, because the Pester stuff has been on my to-do list for an embarrassingly long time. And that's the way I'm going to go when I eventually sit down to do it. I'm going to do PS Koans.
Yes. And Glenn is mentioning that there are also some great PowerShell Summit Pester talks. So if you find those YouTube videos, those are also good and helpful.
Yeah. If you guys know Missy Janusko, she presents a lot from what I understand on Pester. She would be a good person to have on the podcast, it seems to me, perhaps to talk about that very subject.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that'd be neat. So are you speaking I know you're speaking it at night. Are you speaking anywhere else in the near future?
Let's see. I don't think so.
Okay.
I'm pretty much until Ignite conference in November, I think I'm pretty well booked.
Okay.
Yeah. So the next one will be a biggie. Ignite's always a pretty overwhelming experience. It'll be interesting to be there in Orlando. The last one I went to was in Chicago, and my remembrance of it is in the hallway. Even though the main hallway was so huge, people were so crammed in there, it's almost like you could be carried by people, by scrunching between their shoulders.
Wow.
Wow. And to think that in that venue in Chicago, there were 2 conferences going on. That venue, I don't remember what it was called, but they had Ignite, which is 20,000+ people, and another equally large conference at the same venue.
That's crazy.
Ugh, inconceivable.
So Ryan Yates reminded me that Robert Kane is the one that did that Pester course on Pluralsight.
Mm-hmm.
Robert's a cool guy. I've met him a couple times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So where can people find out more about what you're doing? And maybe do you have a link somewhere that has the type of stuff that you're doing? I know that you're Adam the Automator.
No, that's Adam Bertram.
You're not. You're
my
Tim
handle,
Trainer Tim. Tim Trainer.
My handle is Tech Trainer Tim.
Tech Trainer Tim. Okay.
Yeah. That's my Twitter handle, and it actually is my personal website. So what I've done at Tech Trainer Tim, it's funny. The website is just a static HTML site that I might as well have used front page to design.
Nice.
But what's good about it is that it aggregates all of my professional work right there on the front page, and it also has a contact form that actually works. So I would recommend techtrainertim.com.
Very cool.
And final thought, Hal, I think it was you who mentioned video games. I saw on the Xbox store earlier tonight this game called PC Building Simulator. And I don't know why, but I bought it. Yeah, what looks so interesting about it, there's challenges. There's a story mode where you take over your uncle's PC shop. So you get customers coming in for upgrades and repairs. And it actually, the developer of the game worked with all these OEMs. So you're actually using real NVIDIA cards and Intel processors. Okay. So I'm pretty excited. After we finish, I'm going to go play it.
I wonder if that'd probably help you with your A+ certification.
Indeed. Yeah, it really will. Yeah, I think this game, it's been a Steam game, I guess, for a long time, but now it's on Xbox, which is my platform. I believe it would be a very legit learning platform for people. Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
So, Jonathan, this just came to me. I have a new question.
Oh, good.
So, hey, Tim, tell us about your favorite non-computer related hobby.
Okay. Well, what springs to mind is the guitar. I've played guitar for an embarrassingly long time, over 40 years.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm 49 and I've been playing since I was about 8 or 9 years old. So it's a part of me. And it's funny, just parenthetically, I live in Nashville, as I said, and so it seems that you can't throw a rock without hitting a professional musician, somebody who makes their living. And I've talked to some pretty high-profile guitarists, and I always have to laugh. One guy, I said, does the instrument feel like an extension to your body like it does to me? He's like, that's my job. And this other dude, a country dude, who's known all of his published work as pure country. And I'm talking to him, and he's essentially like, yeah, the country stuff is just my day job. I'm the Metallica man, and he's a metalhead. And, what he listens to and plays in his personal life
that's funny.
Diametrically opposed to his career. So it's funny, really interesting. that notion of music as an occupation, as a career. So yeah, I'm plucking on the guitar every day. In my office, I've got a couple guitars. I've got 3 on my wall here in my home office. It is a part of me.
That's very cool.
Are you guys musicians?
I'm not.
Not even close.
No.
My son plays guitar. He's
I
been
am
playing
into
for a while.
Metallica and music in general, but
Mm-hmm.
if I could play an instrument, it would be the drums. I am definitely a steering wheel drummer.
Yeah.
You know what I would want to learn? You're never going to guess this.
Accordion.
Cello.
Cello?
Oh,
Okay.
I would love to learn how to play cello. I just love the way that instrument sounds. And I bet it's very cool to feel it vibrate in your hands.
Why cello as opposed to one of the other stringed instruments like that?
If my soul has a resonant frequency, it's in the range of a cello. I don't know of a better way to describe it than that. It just,
Wow.
I think that's a brilliant insight.
I just love the way it sounds.
I agree, and you're right. Because you play it with between your legs, you're making full body contact with the instrument, so you absolutely are vibrating along with it. And it's got so much more life to it than, say, the bass does. The Bach cello suites are lovely. Yeah, I think that's a brilliant idea. Do it.
Yeah, I
Get
should.
a cello. Look up an instructor and go for it. That's what I say.
Well, Tim, thank you very much for spending some time with us.
You're most welcome. Thanks so much for having me. It's an honor and a great joy.
All righty. Till next time. Thanks, everybody.
All right, good night, everybody. Thanks especially for the people who hung out with us live.
And
That's
Ryan.
always great. Thank you.
Super champ, Ryan.
Yes.
And he's awake. I mean, he's actually still awake.
That's just
Wow,
amazing.
this is the Ryan Yates in the UK. He's been live with us all this time?
Yeah, he's in the chat room. Yeah.
Wow, Ryan. Hey, man, I look forward to meeting you in person. I've talked to you online a bunch. I think you're going to Ignite, and if so, I will be on the lookout for you.
When is Ignite this year?
Early to mid-November is about all I remember. 10th and 11th, or the week of the 10th, something like that.
Where are they having it?
Orlando.
Okay, Orlando again. Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'll have to wing an invite to that one. I don't know if my company is having a booth there or not, but we have before, and I've staffed it.
Yeah.
Oh, I bet that's fun.
Mm-hmm.
It is, especially when I don't have to pay.
Right.
Oh, sure.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it's a lot of talking, a lot of standing on your feet. But it's all right.
The old grip and grin, as it's called.
Yes, this is true.
Mm-hmm.
How's a booth, babe? I guess that's not. I guess that's not a thing anymore.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Especially, I don't think Microsoft would tolerate that at their conference.
No.
I don't even know if they have in the past. I don't remember, to be honest.
Yeah. That was everywhere. I mean,
I see.
Endemic. Yeah, that culture shift has definitely happened. So has anybody gotten into 3D printing?
I have not. I'm looking forward to it.
Not too long ago. It's pretty neat.
So you've taken the plunge. How much research did you do before you actually purchased hardware?
I shortcutted and crowdsourced the research a little bit.
Nice.
In that I was chatting on Facebook about it. One of my friends said, hey, you need to check this one out. It's kind of it has the best bang for the buck, really low entry price, and there's a huge community on it. And I went to, there's a specific Facebook group for this model. It's a Creality Ender 3 is what it's called. And he was so right. There was so many people in this active community that I basically, at that moment, decided that was the one.
Oh, nice.
And then I bought it like the next day, and I've been happy with it. And it's $250. I mean, it's
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've had a model similar to you, Hal. I kind of crowdsourced, and I also, what's in my Evernote, I'm looking at it right now, is the Creality CR10.
Yeah, that's like the big brother to the one I have.
And then for filament, I was recommended Hatchbox PLA 3D printer filament. Does that sound familiar?
Yep, that is a really popular brand. Hatchbox.
So, I think my son's about to get into this in a big way because at Georgia Tech, they have something like 7 maker spaces that the students have access to. And they have 3D printers and, all the milling machines and...
Do you bring your own filament cutters, or do they provide that?
I think they provide it. And they have one that has a plasma cutter. I mean, just like...
Neat.
Yeah, I think he loves that kind of stuff. I think he's going to have a blast with that, assuming he finds time to go play.
Yeah.
But he loves building stuff. He's built like a little workshop down here, and I forget what we were doing, but there was one day where I think it was around the 4th of July that he decided that we needed a table on our outside porch, and he built one in like half an hour. He just had wood downstairs, and he just had like a saw, and he's just drilling it together. And he had constructed a really nice, very stable table in like 30 minutes. I was like, it's still up there. I was really impressed with that.
Boy, that warms my heart. That's a beautiful thing when you find your professional passion like that. My grandpa Cook told me a long, long time ago, he said, Tim, if you can find work that you would do even if you weren't paid for it, you found your right career.
Oh, yeah. That's not his passion, though. He wants to be a neurologist.
Oh,
so
he told me that.
Yeah, he's studying neuroscience, or he's going to be studying neuroscience. Yeah, he wants to be a child neurologist.
Very interesting. Okay. Do you need a PhD for that?
Well, you will. He'll need to go to medical school.
Oh, it's an MD thing.
Yeah, it's an MD.
Oh,
yeah.
I see.
Yep.
I see. Oh, boy. Yeah, that's quite a road.
Yeah, it's a long road. We'll see if he stays on it.
Cool. Alrighty, guys. I'm going to call it a night.
All right. Same here.
Good night. Thank you so much, Tim. Take care.
Everybody.
You got it. See you.
Bye.